Before we understand that core emotional experiences like sadness and anger and fear and disgust and joy play vital functions in helping us adapt to the environment that we're in and survive and connect with other people in helpful ways, it can be hard to appreciate the value of feeling our emotions. And it makes sense that people learn to block their awareness of certain emotions because often early in life, we may have had experiences with some of these emotions that were really overwhelming and felt unsafe, and we had to try to deal with it alone. Maybe we didn't have caregivers who were helping us process and digest big emotional experiences on a consistent basis, which all infants and children need in order to understand and process their emotions. We don't have the capacity to do it all on our own. So people build walls against feeling certain emotions that at one point felt really unsafe. And that's so normal. But those defenses that were helpful at one point in helping us feel safe can become liabilities later in life that can hold us back or prevent us from having normal, healthy emotional experiences that help us survive and thrive. I'm Trevor Youngquist. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and in this video we're going to be talking about the vital importance of being able to feel our primary emotions and the ways that we might have other emotions called secondary emotions that inhibit or cover over those primary emotions when we've learned it's unsafe to feel them. We're also going to talk about other defenses like addictions or distractions or dissociation that can also serve to cover over primary emotional experiences that we've learned are not safe to feel at some point early in our lives. So first, let's talk about the vital evolutionary purpose of primary or core emotional experiences that are programmed into us to help us survive. And these include sadness, fear, anger, disgust, joy, excitement, and surprise. So first, the evolutionary function of grief and sadness is to help us process emotional losses and accept them so we can eventually move forward in our lives. And when we lose something, a person we're close to, a relationship, a pet, some part of our identity, maybe a dream that didn't work out, or some object that was very important to us, it really hurts. And our deep emotional attachments to people and parts of ourselves are stored in emotional centers of the brain that we can't just think our way out of. We can't just decide to move on. We need to feel our sadness and our grief about the loss in order to help our brains digest the reality, the painful reality that this person or this thing is gone. We cannot think our way out of it. We need to feel our way into the new reality of our lives without the thing that we've lost. Sadness can also arise when we feel disappointed or when we feel hurt by another in a relationship. And that sadness can help us make a bid to connect and repair the relationship if there's been a rupture. Now, on to the primary emotion of fear. The evolutionary purpose of fear is to alert us when we are in some kind of danger. And it alerts us to run or hide or seek safety when we're in a situation that is immediately physically threatening to our life or has the potential to be, or also could be threatening in some sort of social way. And fear activates the fight or flight nervous system response in our body that prepares us to run and seek safety. Anger, on the other hand, arises when we feel that someone has crossed our boundaries or that we or someone we care about has been mistreated in some way by another. Anger can also arise in response to feeling like a situation is unjust. And what anger does is it activates a strong energy in us, a fiery energy that helps us stand up for ourselves or those we care about in the face of an injustice, and it helps us set boundaries and, if we need to, fight for ourselves. That could be a physical fight or another kind of fight, but just it gives us the fiery energy to advocate for ourselves and assert ourselves and not be pushed over or walked on. It's a vital part of self-preservation in threatening environments for us to be able to access a sense of anger, so we can stand up for ourselves and we can tap into that vital energy that says, no, I will not accept this. This is not okay with me. And if we don't have access to that, or our access to that is blocked, we can have a really hard time setting boundaries or standing up for ourselves, and we can feel really used or exploited. The evolutionary purpose of the emotion of disgust is to warn us that something is toxic or poisonous to us. And it evolved originally to help us avoid contaminated or toxic food. It would, when we'd have a disgust response, it makes us recoil and can make us vomit even, and just pull back from the toxic thing and avoid it. And disgust has been generalized to also help us avoid situations and people that are toxic for us. And if we think back on someone who's acted in a really unfair or abusive or sickening way to us, we can feel a physical revulsion in our bodies that's signaling to us that we need to stay away from this situation or stay away from this person. Our body is telling us on a visceral level that this is not good for you. Stay away. And so it's so important to be able to feel that sense of disgust that's so visceral, so we know when we need to avoid someone or something. There are times where disgust could potentially be triggered based on social conditioning about a person or a group that is deemed lesser. And that would be a time where it would be helpful to question that disgust response. But very generally, disgust is worth listening to when we feel it in our bodies. And now for joy, there are a few different evolutionary positive functions of joy. And the first is to help us connect with other people and strengthen our social bonds. Humans are a social species, and historically it was through the strength of our tribal connections that we survived and persisted through hardships. And so when we feel joy, we feel big, we feel expansive, we feel kind of an overflowing sense of contentment and the desire to reach out to other people and share that joy, to smile, to joke, to connect. And so in that way, it can really help strengthen vital bonds that are important for our ability to survive and thrive. Additionally, joy helps activate the rest and digest state of the nervous system, or the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the opposite of the fight or flight nervous system, also known as the sympathetic nervous system. And when we can tap into that rest or digest state, it helps us regulate ourselves and come back into a state of homeostasis or equilibrium in our bodies, which is good for our long-term health. Finally, the energy and the openness generated by joy can help move us towards activities that could lead to rewards and resources. When I feel a lot of joy, I feel kind of a hope and an optimism and an energy to try new things, or push myself in some way, or take risks, or go for something that I've been wanting to pursue for a long time. And it can help give me the activation energy I need to do something important to me and to take action and to initiate. And so joy can also be a catalyst to move towards the things that are important to us and take important actions in our life that could benefit ourselves and others. The function of excitement is to give us the energy to move towards a person or place or situation where we feel we could benefit or where our needs might be met. And so it gives us the energy to pursue what we think will be good for us. The function of sexual excitement, which is a variant of excitement, is to move towards someone we feel sexual attraction to, with the obvious benefit for survival of procreation and also the social bonding that can come from sharing a sexual experience. And finally, the evolutionary function of the emotion of surprise is to make us pause and to reevaluate our internal understanding of a situation where something has surprised us, so we can update our understanding and better be aligned with the reality of the situation so we can be more prepared going forward. So those are our primary or core emotions, and they evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to help us survive, to maintain important social bonds, to know what's good for us and what's not good for us, and to help us fight or run if we need to, and generally do whatever it takes to survive. One important thing to recognize about these core emotions is that they're designed to arise in response to something that's going on in the environment or in our lives, and they arise, they have a function to serve, they compel us to take some kind of adaptive action, and then they complete, and we move forward and those emotions subside. That's ideally how they're supposed to work. So these emotions evolve to help us navigate the world and survive, and yet we often go to great lengths not to feel our emotions. And I want to talk a little bit about why. Generally, we learn to block even healthy and adaptive emotions because at some point early in our lives, often very early in infancy or early childhood, we had emotional experiences that we learned were not safe to feel. As children, we experience emotions in a very intense and visceral way, and we don't really have the tools or perspective to process them or handle them on our own. And so we're wired to depend on our caregivers to help regulate our emotional experiences through the caregiver attuning to us and validating us and soothing us in those emotions. And that's how we learn to contain and process our emotions. But we need some help when doing it when we're young. But unfortunately, many of us don't get that or don't get that consistently when we really need it. And so we're left with an overwhelming, unbearable emotional experience, and we feel really alone in it. And we learn quickly that that's a excruciating and unsafe experience. And for an infant who's alone experiencing overwhelming emotion, especially if it's distressing emotion, it can truly feel like a sort of death. So the real problem comes when we don't have caregivers who are capable or able consistently to help us process our emotional experiences, or in some cases, they're the cause of our distressing emotional experiences because of some kind of abuse or neglect or rejection or abandonment. And that can be such a difficult thing for an infant to experience because the very people they're depending on to help them regulate their intense emotional experiences are the ones causing the intense dysregulation. When we're not helped to feel and process our emotions as children, we learn that certain emotional experiences are really unsafe and overwhelming. And so we will go to great lengths to suppress those emotions or to otherwise block them from our experience. This is especially true if we learn from our families or society that certain normal, healthy emotions are not acceptable or not welcome or will be met with rejection, scorn, abandonment, or shaming. And so we develop a sense of shame about feeling or expressing certain emotions, which can add another heavy layer of blocking on top of our ability to feel these natural emotions. Like with boys, it's often sadness and fear. With girls, it's often anger. Based on societal conditioning, we'll feel shame about experiencing those natural emotions. Even as we grow into adults, we carry the unconscious or implicit memory of times from early in life where we felt emotional overwhelm and sort of the agony and almost the death-like feeling of being alone in overwhelming emotion. And even as capable adults who are now independent and have resources to take care of ourselves, when those emotional memories from early childhood get triggered by something in our lives, it can feel like once again we're transported back into being helpless children, and we can feel the emotional overwhelm again like it's happening in the present moment. And that can be really overwhelming and is another reason why we continue to block and defend against certain emotions even when we're adults and have the resources to deal with them better than we did when we were children. So if in early life we learned that certain emotions were not safe and we needed to block them or defend against them somehow, those emotions don't just go away when we grow up and become adults. We continue to have that defended relationship against them. And unless we learn how to lower our defenses and process them in a safe way with our adult resources, then we can continue to be ruled by these maladaptive defenses that can cause a lot of problems in our life and in our relationships. One of the ways that we defend against primary emotions that we learned were unsafe or overwhelming is through secondary emotions. And whereas primary emotions are raw emotional experiences that arise in response to some stimulus in our environment, secondary emotions are reactions to other emotions. They're reactions to primary emotions. And they especially arise to cover over or distract from primary emotions that we learned in some way are threatening. So some examples of secondary emotions are anxiety, guilt, and shame, and these often arise to cover over a more primal and raw primary emotional experience. For example, if we've learned that anger is a unsafe emotion to feel and express, then instead of feeling anger, we might begin to feel a lot of anxiety when we're in a situation and the anger's kind of trying to come up, or we might feel a lot of shame that really suppresses our emotion and makes us small and withdrawn if we've learned that anger is something to feel really deeply ashamed about. And both of those serve the function of repressing the primary emotion and making sure that it stays underground and is not expressed, which would be scary and out of control feeling. Sometimes the primary emotions we listed can also be a secondary emotion that covers over a different primary emotion that we experienced as unsafe. So for example, if we feel a lot of sadness, but we were conditioned through some experiences in our early life to believe that sadness is not a good or safe emotion to experience or will lead to abandonment, then instead of feeling sad, we might feel angry. And maybe we've learned that that feels safer than feeling the raw experience of sadness. And so we can have a mismatched emotional response to a situation. Outside of secondary emotions, there are a lot of other ways that we can also defend against emotions that don't feel safe or that feel very vulnerable. So to briefly cover some of these defenses, addictions and substance use can be one of the ways that we numb against certain emotional experiences or distract from them, from certain emotional traumas. And this could be substance use, but could also be porn or gambling or shopping, anything that releases a short-term blast of dopamine to make us feel really good for a very short period of time, even if it doesn't address the fundamental problem or discomfort we're experiencing, and we come right down from the high and might even feel worse or further in a state of vulnerability after we come down from the blast of dopamine. We might also turn to other distractions that give us a little dopamine fix, like TV or the internet, or overworking, or overeating or undereating, or anything that can help us numb our emotions and distract us from what we're feeling in our bodies. Dissociation, whether daydreaming or fully kind of dissociating and checking out of our bodies, is another way that we can block against emotional experience that feels very unsafe. And also worry and rumination, believe it or not, those are very uncomfortable states, but they can be a defense against deeper primary emotional content that we feel in our bodies. And it's sort of a attempt by the cognitive part of our brain to distract us and cover over those deeper visceral feelings that aren't captured in words, but just raw, uncomfortable sensation in our bodies. And this mental chatter and running around with these different looping thoughts can really serve to distract us from those physical sensations that some part of us deeply, deeply believes is intolerable or very scary and unsafe. We can also defend against certain primary emotions by avoiding situations that we believe will trigger them, and that can make our lives very small in a unhelpful way. And some theorize too that in some cases depression is a defense against more deeper primary emotions that are left unprocessed, because depression has a way of numbing us against our feelings. So how do we process raw primary emotions that have kind of gotten stuck in us and that we've blocked against, but are creating these problems in our life because we are so defended against them? And ultimately, it comes down to being able to feel those emotions to completion. And it can be very hard to access them, but it is possible through a number of strategies. And then to show ourselves, to kind of update our implicit beliefs that these emotions can be safe to feel as an adult, and that we are not helpless children anymore who once felt so overwhelmed by these emotional experiences. We need to show ourselves that the situation is different and that we have more resources and capacity now to feel these feelings. So said another way, we need to become conscious and aware of these unprocessed primary emotional experiences that might be lingering in our bodies or that we're really blocked against, and then have corrective emotional experiences that show us that it can be safe to feel these feelings and to feel them to completion, so we can have a healthy and adaptive relationship to these normal emotions and not be ruled by the ways that we defend against them. At a high level, some basic tools for moving in this direction are to deepen your connection with yourself and to deepen your connections with others who are safe. Connecting with yourself involves learning to approach your inner experience of thoughts and feelings and physical sensations with curiosity and openness and a sense of kindness and compassion towards yourself and the pain that you might find as you turn your attention inward. And it also involves developing mindful awareness about the physical sensations in our bodies, because emotions are experienced through physical sensation, and it's through holding our awareness in our bodies that we can allow emotions to flow through us to completion and unblock the ways that we've habitually learned to clamp down and prevent these emotions from being felt and completed in our bodies. Connecting with others is another crucial piece of healing emotional wounds and learning how to reclaim a healthy relationship to primary emotions that we once blocked. And that's because, so many of our emotional wounds come from relational experiences with important people in our lives, where maybe we felt abandoned or shamed or humiliated or neglected or ignored, and those can create a lot of intolerable feelings when we're young. And so by having relational experiences that correct that are safe, that are attuned, that are validating, that are accepting of our full selves, can be a pivotal way to update our internal models of the world and to show us that it is safe to feel these emotions, and that we are in a different situation in life than we were in when we were children and were so overwhelmed by these traumatic emotional experiences. So therapy, group therapy, recovery communities, or other safe friendships where you really feel like you're able to take the risk of being emotionally vulnerable and showing your full self and expressing emotions that maybe you learned long ago were not safe to express to other people. When we can feel accepted and seen and validated in those emotions by safe people, it can go a huge way towards reconditioning our relationship with those emotions and allowing stuck emotions to be processed and integrated into our more full adult sense of self that's no longer stuck in the past. I hope this video was helpful in shedding some light on the importance of being able to feel our primary emotions and why we block against them with secondary emotions or other defenses. So if something was helpful in it for you, please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.